All right, the U.S. Open finals are set, and we've got Jannik Sinner, world number one, versus American dream sweetheart Taylor Fritz for the men's final. And in the women's, we've got Arina Sabalenka versus Jessica Pegula. And in this video, I'm going to tell you why I believe that Jannik Sinner will beat Taylor Fritz for his second major of the year and of his career. We're going to break down their matchup here. We're going to talk a little bit about how they got here, and I'll give you my full prediction in this episode of The Slice, presented by Betway. Let's get into it. Okay, well, welcome back to the show, people. Big semifinals. We had Jack Draper puking on court. We had a five-setter between the Americans in the semifinal. And we are set for a couple big-time matchups where we've got two of the top favorites for the men's and women's versus two Americans who are the underdogs. But that is going to create drama because who loves an underdog more than anyone? The Americans, the American public in general, and they've got two Americans in the final to root for. So will that change things? We're going to have to wait and see. The Slice is presented by Betway. Thanks for being here. Make sure you subscribe. This is Bets of the Day. We're going to look at the odds. So Betway, our friends at Betway have Jannik Sinner as a minus 400 favorite over Taylor Fritz at plus 300. So he's got pretty big favorite for Jannik Sinner there. And on the women's side, they got Arina Sabalenka as a negative 334 favorite and Jessica Pegula as a plus 250 underdog. So they've got Taylor Fritz closer than, backwards. They've got Jessica Pegula closer than Taylor Fritz for the upset, but Americans are on the downside of both of those. So those are the odds from Betway. If you're going to bet responsibly, bet on Betway. Okay, big time moment here for these guys' careers. Jannik Sinner going for his second major of the year, and I think this would literally silence anyone who thought that he wasn't the number one player in the world. And that is not me. I believe he's the number one player in the world. For some reason, my comments in the last video caused some of you to think that I don't like Jannik Sinner. I honestly really like the guy as a personality. I don't think he doped, and I think he is by far the best hardcourt player in the world right now. And I believe he's going to show that on Sunday when he beats Taylor Fritz. And I'm going to tell you why. But I want to clear up the air that I do not have anything against Jannik Sinner. I would say he's not my favorite if he wasn't, but I love the guy. When he broke onto the scene in, I believe, 2019, I was freaking out about the skill that I saw with him, being able to hit so big from the baseline, both sides, slide into the forehand and backhand on the hard court like Djokovic, and then also use crazy feel, touch around the court. And we've seen all of that in his career, which is accumulated now in him being the number one player in the world and the favorite going into the U.S. Open to try and win his second major. So there's a big difference between a one major winner and a two-time major winner, and he has the chance here to catapult himself into that next stratosphere of tennis players. Taylor Fritz, on the other hand, has never made it past the quarterfinals of a major until this U.S. Open, where he did, obviously, and then he just beat his friend Frances Tiafoe in the semifinals. So I wasn't able to watch fully either of the semifinals. So that's why I'm not going to comment on those matches more. I'm just going to look forward. But clearly he won the last two sets and he was able to physically stand up to the test against Frances. So he comes here trying to literally make a massive, massive name for himself. Because to be honest, I'm going to say it, no one remembers the people who are runners up that much. You know it. Like as a Canadian, I think Milos Raonic made the final of Wimbledon. Gene Bouchard made the final of Wimbledon. But people will remember the winners. So Taylor's the first American man and we've all talked about it, in a final of a major since 2009, Andy Roddick, but he would be the first player to win a major American player since 2003, Andy Roddick, over 20 years. So that would literally change his life forever. If you can make one major final and not win it and then kind of fade off like a Berrettini or Nick Kyrgios, it's not really there. You're not putting yourself on the next level of tennis players, and he has a chance to do that on Sunday. So that's big for him. But let's get into the matchup and why I think that Sinner, it's not a huge prediction. He's definitely the favorite. Everyone acknowledges that, but why I think he's going to win and why I think Taylor Fritz won't cause the upset. because the first style point I would say is, what did Medvedev do against Sinner at the Australian Open in the first two sets at the beginning of the year? He bombed it. He played big, aggressive tennis, and that got Jannik Sinner on the back foot, got him a little stunned, and allowed Medvedev to win two sets, and then he ran out of gas. So if he hadn't have run out of gas, would that aggressive, big serving, big uh, playing style work against Jannik Sinner? Taylor Fritz has the weapons to obviously do that. He's got the big serve, he's got the big game. But Jannik Sinner is now a different player even than he was at the Australian Open. So I think that's going to be less of an effective matchup style. But the main factor in why I believe Sinner's going to win is been there, done that. Sinner's been in the finals before of Australia. He won. He beat Medvedev in that. He beat Djokovic earlier in that tournament. This tournament, he's already beaten Medvedev. He's already beaten Tommy Paul. And then he beat Jack Draper. But he played very well against Tommy Paul and against Jack Draper. And he played great in the moments that he needed to against Daniil Medvedev and took out the hardest opponent left in the draw doing that as well. So he's been there to these moments, to these deep parts of the tournaments before. Even when he lost in the semifinals and quarterfinals in Wimbledon to Djokovic, those are all experience points. And him being able to be in this moment before and overcome it and actually win a major, he knows he can do it. And I think he'll have less nerves potentially than Fritz. Fritz also, it's just you see it over and over with players. Their first time, especially in the men's game at the level, it's hard for players to find their best. So maybe Fritz will though, and he'll step up to the moment. He'll use the American crowd and he'll just play his best tennis. Then maybe will the pressure get to Jannik Sinner, where he feels like he's the favorite. He maybe was the favorite coming into the match against Medvedev in Australia, but it wasn't as clear as it is here. Although he had been owning that head to head, he's definitely the favorite here. Is that going to make him feel like he should win? Is that going to drop his game? Is that going to mess with his head? Is he going to get tight? We'll have to wait and see. But I wouldn't count on it. So I'm putting that area in feeling the moment. I'm giving the advantage to Jannik Sinner. Baseline game. These players are kind of similar, to be honest. I think Fritz is a little bigger than Jannik, but I also think he's a little clumsier and a little less natural of a mover on the court. He's a little less good of an athlete, I would say. But he's a bit bigger and a bit stronger. But from the baseline, to me, it seems like anything that Taylor Fritz can do from the baseline, Jannik Sinner can do better. There's really no part of the game that Taylor Fritz has an advantage from the baseline. And that's a problem because that's where he feels most comfortable. So does Sinner. But again, I think the Sinner forehand running out to either side, pace-wise, heaviness-wise, he's right there with Fritz, and he's more controlling with it, I think. And he has a bit more variety to it, and he has a bit more ability to defend and go cross court and go down the line from out wide, and he's just a bit more dynamic. So the problem here is the baseline game is the strongest part of Taylor Fritz's game, and Sinner's better at that than Taylor Fritz is, I think. So that's going to be a huge issue, I think, if you're a Taylor Fritz fan. Third point, the return game. Sinner has a less big serve, maybe less good serve than Taylor Fritz. Taylor Fritz has been at essentially 80+% of first serve win percentages in the last few matches he's played. And Sinner's been more in that 70% range, 75. He's been up over 80, but even against Jack Draper today, I think he was up about 75%. So he doesn't have as big or as effective as a first serve, but what he lacks in the first serve, he makes up for it in the return. Jannik Sinner's return game has grown a lot, and he's been super effective against big servers like Medvedev, been able to handle it very well, been able to break a lot. And Fritz, I have not recognized him as being one of the better returners on tour. And Sinner's serve is still great. It's not like it hasn't been super improved and super effective now. So the return game that Sinner's going to deploy against the Fritz serve is going to be an interesting one to watch. Will Fritz serve the lights out? I'm sure he will at certain points of the match, but to win over 5 sets, you got to win 3 sets. And it's hard for me to see Sinner not returning well, getting stuck into the rallies, and then just moving forward into Fritz and making him feel very, very bad. So, yeah, there's so many parts of the game Fritz and Sinner are similar builds, similar players, both super strong from the baseline, can hit it huge, but Sinner's just kind of got every area of the game except for the serve a little bit better, and the serve again gets canceled out by his superior return. So yeah, that's why I think that Sinner will prevail on Sunday. It's going to be, again, if you can hit it big, if you can serve big, if you can hit a big forehand, you've got a chance. Taylor Fritz playing in front of the American crowd will be crazy. If he gets pumped up and Sinner gets tight and doesn't play a good match, this could get really interesting. The U.S. Open is where upsets happen. It's happened more here than anywhere else in the majors in recent memory. So could Taylor Fritz do it? Definitely. I believe he could. If he wins, I will happily make a video on why I was wrong. But my prediction is Jannik Sinner in 4 sets over Taylor Fritz, and may the best man win. Now, speaking about the ladies, Jessica Pegula, another American hero in the making, versus Aryna Sabalenka, the clear favorite in my opinion. The story, Aryna Sabalenka having a higher speed on her top spin forehands than any male player. That's crazy. She's an absolute beast. And again, though, last year she lost to Coco Gauff. Can Jessica Pegula stay at home, play super solid, and will Sabalenka not play her best tennis like I don't think she did against Coco? The thing is, Pegula's probably not going to be able to defend like Coco did in the last round, last year's U.S. Open, and maybe Sabalenka won't get in her head as much as she did in the last one either. You kind of just feel like Sabalenka is just on cruise control, winning right now. So I'm calling Sabalenka in 2 sets over Pegula, but I'm not as confident in that as I am, in the 2 sets. It could be 2, it could be 3, but I am confident in Sabalenka winning as well as Sinner. So it's going to be a great couple of days of tennis. There are some predictions for you. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section below, as you always do. May the best man win. May the best woman win. U.S. Open titles are on the line. It's big time stuff. That's a slice. Thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing. And we will see you after the matches.